Monday, and welcome back to the Lorden Arts channel. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. Case Cracked is the show where we look into a mystery and what are the critical pieces that help solve that mystery. You might remember a few episodes in the past where we've discussed finding a case where a psychic helps solve it. Brain Scratcher Travis told us about today's story. Was this case actually solved by prayer? When we're young, we don't always make the best decisions. Between peer pressure from friends and worrying about starting our future, the waters can soon become very muddy, even for the most focused youth. This can lead to young people needing to find some freedom. Some teens find events where they can get away from the watchful eye of their parents. 17-year-old Laura Hatch was one of those kids, and on October 2nd, 2004, she went to a party just outside her hometown of Redmond, Washington. Her drive back to town was full of twists and turns, with an abundance of trees and foliage. Her family discovered that she was gone the following morning, and her brother called the police to report her missing. As investigators began their work questioning everyone who knew Laura, they immediately hit a huge roadblock. None of the teenagers who had attended the party the previous night would tell them exactly where the party had been held. This left investigators with no starting point in their search. For days, every line of inquiry was followed, but none led to Laura. She also had no wallet, cell phone, or driver's license with her, limiting the usual trail of clues that could aid investigators' efforts. They felt that everyone was hiding something, and her friends had started to allude to the fact that Laura had been troubled or upset about something. This hurt the family. Laura had a happy life, they claimed. Her sister Amy stated that she showed no such signs. She stated that Laura was an attractive, popular girl with lots of friends. No signs of foul play could be found, and neither could her car. This seemed to tip the scale for investigators who were now convinced that Laura was a runaway. No searches were conducted, but they did send her vital information out in statewide bulletins and advisories. The family tried to search on their own, but had no idea where to begin. Quickly, their hope turned to sorrow as more days went by with no new information and no sightings. Quote, "We had already given her up and let her be dead in our hearts," her mother said. Finally, on the 6th, someone told investigators that the party that was held the night Laura had disappeared was near Novelty Hill Road, just east of Lake Washington. Novelty Hill is less than a 10-minute drive from Redmond. Soon, searches were being held by law enforcement and the Hatch family, which retraced the most likely route she would have taken as she left the residence. The family felt as though they were being humored by investigators who were not really taking the disappearance seriously. That was when her parents, Jean and Todd, decided to hire a private investigator. On Saturday the 9th, a 200-volunteer search party was organized. The route from Novelty Hill to Redmond was searched extensively, but no trace of Laura was found. One of Laura's friends, Beth Ann Knorr, was disturbed by her absence. As she and her mother, Shay Knorr, helped search that Saturday for her missing friend, she showed her mother a picture of Laura and asked, what more could they do to find her? Shay simply told her daughter all they could do was pray. That night, Shay claims she had a dream that she was back in the woods searching for Laura. During the dream, she constantly heard someone saying, "Keep going, keep going." When she woke up the next morning, she was filled with a sense of urgency and felt she and Beth Ann needed to search the woods again. They drove to the Union Hill area, which is just southeast of the route she was believed to have taken that night. As Shay got out of the car, she said that she felt they were close to the right spot. There, she and her daughter prayed, "Let her speak out to us." Within moments, Shay says she felt drawn to a steep embankment nearby. As her daughter waited at the road, Shay climbed over a concrete barrier and down more than 100 feet through weeds, trees, and high grass. When she reached the bottom, she was confronted with more and more vegetation and began to think she was in the wrong spot. Before leaving, she gave the area one more look, and that was when, through the trees, she thought she saw a car. As she drew nearer, she realized she was looking at Laura's Toyota Camry. The car was so badly crushed that family pastor Randy Phillips said it looked more like a piece of modern art. With the help of a passing motorist, Shay was able to get closer to the car. As they made their way even closer, a branch fell on the back of the vehicle. That's when Shay heard a shout. Laura was trapped in the back seat, still alive. When Beth Ann arrived at the car, she asked Laura, "Do you know me?" Laura replied, "Of course I know you. Why did you bring your mother? I think I might be late for curfew." It was obvious that Laura was very confused, thinking it had only been a day when several days had passed. Shay then used her cell phone to call Todd, Laura's father. Laura had survived for 8 days, trapped in her car almost 200 feet down a ravine with no food or water. The spot she sat in would have been nearly impossible for search parties to find because there was no sign of an accident. Somehow, Laura had found a space between two guardrails that allowed her to run off the road, leaving no evidence behind. When paramedics arrived, she was taken to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, where they found that her injuries were extensive. Not only was she battling severe dehydration, but her ribs, one leg, and various bones in her face were broken. Most troubling of all was the blood clot that Dr. Richard G. Ellenbogen, chief neurosurgeon at Harborview Medical Center, found near the right rear side of her brain. Her left eye socket and other facial bones would require surgery to fix, but first, the blood clot had to be dealt with. Dr. Ellenbogen stated that had Laura not been so severely dehydrated, the blood clot would have grown larger and traveled quickly to her brain, where it would have been fatal. Her doctors had to slowly rehydrate her as they monitored the clot, which eventually dissolved on its own. Unfortunately, the bones of her face had begun to set and heal during this time and would require surgery where they would be broken again to set them properly. "She's in amazing shape for someone lost for 8 days, Dr. Ellenbogen remarked. Even though Laura was disoriented and had no memory of what had happened to her, she kept her spirits up by joking with the doctor and his staff. Her doctors reported that she would go on to lead the active life she had before her accident." Soon after Laura's rescue, Sheriff Sergeant John Urquhart began to speak out about what he believed was the real reason Laura went missing and doubts he had about the entire story. He stated that in 24 years with the department, he had never known of a person to survive 8 days without food or water, calling it an extraordinary tale of survival. Although it's not known if Laura was drinking the night of the accident, he believed that she was speeding. He also believed that she was running away from home and not going towards it. Most importantly, he didn't believe she was in the car for the full 8 days. He went on to say, "And look how she was found. A vision? If you believe that's how God works, then case closed. If you do not, the whole story is suspect." But no crime appears to have been committed regardless of what really happened. Privacy prevents me from saying much, but it was her brother who reported her missing, and we concluded that she was a runaway because of the things going on in her life, her family, her personality. That comment understandably upset the Hatch family. In a statement released by her sister Amy, they said, quote, "We have no doubts that Laura was down there for 8 days and are appalled and disappointed that the sheriff's department, whose job it was to find her, are painting her as a runaway. We never even considered that Laura may have run away and believed from the start that she must have had an accident. We are a happy family. Sure, Laura's a teenager, and she was upset because our grandpa died recently, and she wanted to change class at school, but she's a teenager who has never been grounded. Why would she want to run away?" A vigil had been scheduled for Laura. After she was found, it was turned into a celebratory prayer service. More than 100 people from the family's church gathered to celebrate what they called the miracle of her return. As the celebration started to wind down, attendees wrote messages to the Hatch family on colored strips of paper that were then linked, creating a prayer chain. We were afraid that we weren't going to find her. We weren't going to get her back. This is the best thing that could happen because there were a million awful scenarios, Amy said. The fact that she managed to survive that crash and then survive another 8 days without medical attention, that in itself is a miracle. Case cracked. I would like to thank the Seattle Times, the Chicago Tribune, Cron.com, ComoNews.com, KitsupSun.com, Spokesman.com, and Newspapers.com. Of course, the biggest thank you goes to Christy Arnhart for researching and writing up today's case. And here she is now to discuss it with us. Christy, I'm not sure I understand the value of the sheriff's comments.
To be honest with you, I don't either. I mean, does it matter how she ended up crashing? The police say she's a runaway. Her family says it was an accident, and there's no crime for them to actually file charges on. So why does the sheriff think that he can say these things to the press and just put it all out there?
I mean, there has to be some element where, like, I mean, the only reason why you would bring up something like that is either one, he is so against religion that he just cannot allow this story about the prayer thing to go, like without getting his comment in about, well, that's obviously not how she was found. Or I would think maybe he does, or he was at least looking at the possibility that there was some type of criminal action. For example, she does run away and then 7 days later decides, I have to go back home, but how can I do it and make sure that I don't get in trouble? We're going to drive my car off the cliff and then I'll go down and get in the back of it. But you've got a really big problem with that. First of all, you'd have to believe that someone else was taking care of her somewhere. And this is if, I don't know, because now my brain is split. You got the possibility that, yeah, the accident was staged. Or the possibility, no, the accident actually happened, but she was somehow found. Someone took care of her, but did not give her any fluids or treat severe injuries, including broken bones in her face.
It didn't even look to me like she could have gotten in and out of the car the way it was smashed.
Right, right. Or, I mean, then let's take the flip side. They stage this. Then how does she get injured that badly for her to go crawl into the back of the car and wait to be found there? Like these injuries, and the injuries are being described by medical staff. It's not like, you know, how do you fake dehydration like that?
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't seem very reasonable or logical. And why are we trying to vilify her? Like, from the sheriff's perspective, I don't get it.
I think it all goes back to the underage drinking, because there's a lot of debate as to whether or not she even had a drink that night. Now, I found some articles, and they're basically shaming parents who would let their children attend these parties. It also encouraged people to try to find out if the parents of the home had allowed the party and how others could be stopped from doing the same thing. I mean, it read like a witch hunt, you know, find these people, stop this activity.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've looked into cases where, unfortunately, I remember one murder in particular that was taking place at a house party that was teenagers drinking. They probably shouldn't have been, not a murder, it was an accidental death.
Oh.
But the parents enabled it. There was clearly parents there. They're saying they didn't know the alcohol was there, but they let their, you know, all their teenagers come over and have this big party. On the flip side of that, I'm also, you know, we've looked into a few missing persons cases where I'm concerned that what you have is an accident, probably from a drinking and driving type situation. You have someone flee the scene and then we never see them again.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm worried about that in Maura Murray's case also. But in an interesting way, the same way that her dehydration supposedly saved her from that tumor, you know, her injuries might have saved her from a worse fate. I mean, her not being able to go off in the woods and try to hide from an accident scene, if she really was intoxicated, you might have never seen her again. Like, it really could have been a completely terrible outcome. But going back, you're never going to stop parties like this from happening. And yes, you're going to have parents that do bad things when it comes around this. Some parents enable their children. I mean, we just did the update on Mercedes.
Mhm.
I always mispronounce it. What's the Arkansas pronunciation?
El Dorado.
Thank you. El Dorado Jane Doe. And in that story, we're starting to hear that basically she learned about cocaine from her mother. So like those things are going to happen. You're never going to be able to stop them.
Yeah.
But really, there's one big question we have in this story. We've been going down this line of looking into cases like this. Christy, you're the one that went through all the research.
Mhm.
You're hearing the sheriff's point of view. He's like, there's no way. The sheriff's basically saying this was not solved by prayer. That whole story doesn't make sense. Did you find anything to support or refute Shay's story? I mean, we know that the sheriff's trying to refute it.
Oh, yeah, he definitely is.
Yeah.
I didn't find anything either way. The only person who can verify these claims are the woman who had the visions and the dreams.
Yeah.
So I think, you just take it on faith if that's the way you believe.
There's a very real result. Like we know this girl is found. She's found still alive. She's rescued. And I think now the more that I try to consider that part of the argument, like even when I try to let my head go down that road of like, all right, do I believe this or not?
Mm-hmm.
I have to believe that's a big component in the sheriff's pushback on this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't allow yourself to believe that there was some type of force that helped guide Shay to that place, then you have to believe that it's been faked, that there's some element of this where people are lying to you. And I think that's where he's stuck. But there's actually a third answer. What if she does pray? What if she does have these dreams? I mean, at a minimum, isn't prayer us focusing on some specific issue in our life? And doesn't that, I mean, that alters your mindset. That might make you think about different things or even behave in different ways. Mm-hmm. Was that enough that she cared to pray, that it drove her to go back out there? It drove her to keep searching. And maybe she got lucky. Like there is a third possibility here. And it doesn't necessarily support, no, prayer solved this, but it doesn't also mean that, this is a bunch of criminals or people that faked this for some reason because a teenager is trying to run away from home.
Well, and if you start adding her into this huge conspiracy that the sheriff is spinning, it just gets more and more unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point. She might have just been open enough to the possibilities to be able to do this.
Yeah. Or God may have lend a hand in this. There's just, I don't know. This is a tough one. Honestly, this one for me is tougher than the psychic ones. The psychic ones don't seem to ever come this close to having a very direct impact in a significant way. Like, this is the lady that she found the missing person. So, this one's got me thinking. I don't know. This is one of the better examples, I think. So
yeah, it makes me think too, because I believe, no matter what your belief, prayer always helps.
Yeah.
One way or another. So it certainly did here.
Yeah. Christy, thank you so much for all your help on today's episode. We really appreciate you, and I've got some other people to thank right now. Thank you, PayPal supporters Angela Welch-Sola and Robert Fearnley. For over 6 years, we've always run limited commercials here on YouTube, and we can't do that without support. If you'd like to help the channel keep going and growing, please visit LordenArts.com. There, you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee, like Candy Bishop recently did. We know that learning about the mechanisms that help support and find justice in these cases is important to understand the many unsolved cases we also cover, and we really appreciate your support in allowing us to continue doing that. Remember, you can get another Lord and Art story every week on the Seriously Mysterious podcast. A new episode is coming tomorrow, and every Tuesday after that, visit SeriouslyMysterious.com and subscribe on your favorite podcatchers. While you're here, don't forget to subscribe below and hit that bell icon if you want to catch one of our weekly Secret Studio live shows. And of course, I'll be back with a new unsolved mystery for you on Friday, right here on the Lord and Arts channel.